goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine. Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, and my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
I think because of a clerical error, we were just bought by Disney. So I think you need to announce this as Disney's Cinema Psycho Show.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that.
I don't think they realize.
No, I don't care. I don't care. They didn't buy us. Fuck them.
Get by me, man.
Get by me, bro. So yeah.
Once again, we were without Elaine.
Now, what did we say she was doing?
I don't think we even said anything last week.
I think we said she was hunting silverback gorillas with a spear.
No, I think it was actually albino white rhinoceroses.
With Eric Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that the fact that they're now extinct is Elaine's fault. So, but don't worry, she'll be back next week. So you can let her know. You can follow her on Twitter and tell her how you feel about making an animal extinct.
Like how her and Jimmy John and Eric Trump and Don Jr.
Yeah,
hunting silverbacks.
But if you're sick of two giant neckbeard man babies who agree with each other most of the time, don't worry. Elaine will be back.
Yes.
Next week. She was on a road trip and now she is sick. So unfortunately, 2 weeks in a row, bummer time. But Elaine is still a part of the show, and she will.
She didn't go away.
Yeah,
she didn't go away.
But we'll be here next week.
But we're on episode 95. Wow, getting up there.
That was a turn in the 90s. That was when grunge and like Shawshank Redemption like that had died out. Like all the good stuff, and then we got Macarena. That was a turning point.
It was a turning point.
Got weird.
That's also when Batman Forever came out.
Yeah,
and
that's
that
we
was.
all thought 7 was the greatest movie of all
we
time
did
because we were 10.
And then everybody quoted Braveheart because everyone was just like, "Oh my God, I want to be Scottish." Put blue paint on my face, and you realize they really didn't do that.
If we're referencing things this way, after episode 99, are we going to go to 00?
Oh no, we're gonna be referencing everyone in their Y2K shit.
Oh yeah,
the
show will just self-destruct
right.
after the end of episode 99.
That's right. 99, we're gonna have to mention End of Days. Okay, so anyway, this week we're going to be talking about a movie that John and I both have an affinity for. And this is part of our Really That Awful series of movies.
Part 2. It's our second edition of this, so if you liked it once, it's coming back. If you didn't, go fuck yourself.
And the movie this week is going to be a classic from Jim Carrey himself, man who's now embroiled in a political issue.
What is it? What's the movie are you talking about?
I'm talking about
Cable Guy.
Cable Guy. Cable Gula.
Very misunderstood movie.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic of dark comedy fame. Okay? So before we get to that, though, we're going to go through a little bit of a news bit. And, John, you found this one. This one's kind of funny.
Yeah. Two of the whiny asshole screenwriters of Disney's Marvel's Avengers Infinity War Part 1 is I'm out of breath.
It's not really a part 1 though. They've already said that. No,
they're not doing a second part of this?
No, they are, but they're not. They dropped the part 1.
Oh, fuck them.
They actually said they're like, well, it's not part 2 anymore. It's just going to be Avengers 4. I'm like, but you filmed it at the same time, right?
What are they
yes.
What are they going to call it? Infinity War,
right?
No.
They're not releasing what it's called because they said that would be a spoiler.
It's probably like the last repose of Tony Stark or something. I mean, they're not going to kill Tony, they'll probably have the character that dies in the first one and as the title of the second one. Some shit like that.
Yeah, something along those lines.
So in case you're seeing this 20 years after the fact and, well, there's no video store anymore, but you're going through whatever the future of Netflix is and you're like, because you spoiled it for yourself because you went too far. But yeah, they've decided that they think that they should be nominated for an Oscar.
Who are these screenwriters?
Do
you got names? We want names. We need some names here.
Let's spill some names.
Let's spill some names.
Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. If you've never seen the Cable Guy,
is he related to Mr. McFeely of Pittsburgh fame?
He likes delivering bad mail.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, so they believe that it should not just for Infinity War, but for the entire series. They want like you worked really hard over all these years award.
Yeah, they don't do that. As much as I hate the Academy, they don't do that.
Here's one example where they would argue with you on that. Return of the King, Lord of the Rings.
It's a good movie.
Kind of it's a way to...
It's a better movie, though. You can't you can't compare Lord of the Rings with Marvel. I'm sorry.
But what they're suggesting is that they gave the entire trilogy an Oscar for Return of the King. It wasn't just for Return of the King. It was for Lord of the Rings.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. But, they've used past precedent of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars.
First of all, this isn't a Supreme Court case. This is the Oscars. It is the biggest boys club of all time. Okay? And the big thing they're complaining about, excuse me, is that no one has given them a golden statue for their Flying Man movies.
Yeah. They're boom movies.
They're boom movies?
They go boom movies. And the thing is, like, okay, both of us love these movies.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like every other week our news bit is on one of these, or we're
Star Wars.
talking about one of them because they come out every 3 months. Yeah. But these aren't Oscar caliber movies. And I know that makes me sound like a film snob. And part of me is a film snob, and part of me is like everyday Joe Schmo.
Yep.
Yeah.
A little bit of a film snob here. Yeah. Can't see this, but I'm tilting my nose up. Yeah.
Nice,
have it, my nose.
Nice visual comedy there for our podcast, Brian.
That's right.
But, these movies aren't artistic achievements. I love Ant-Man.
I would say,
but I'm not giving an Oscar to it.
Here's the one thing I would say that is an achievement is the technical wizardry
Which they
that
usually
goes
win
into
awards
these
for that.
And they do.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is these movies are not Get Out. Okay? I mean, it's just not happening. Okay?
You're not Schindler's List. You're not Citizen Kane.
I'm not coming away from Infinity War, no matter how good it is.
Yeah. Pondering
life's biggest questions, which is typically what happens when you go to see one of these movies that is nominated for writing credit or even a Best Picture. Like, those movies are deep movies. They tackle issues that are happening in our world. They're tackling personal issues. They're tackling societal issues. I'm sorry, but a flying man in a suit of armor,
CGI
what's that?
Purple
what
monster
is
fighting
that?
a guy in a cat outfit.
Yeah. What is that gonna talk about? I mean, I guess you could, and that's not to say that Marvel movies don't talk about these sort of things, but not to the level that a movie like Get Out would. I know we talked about Black Panther, and we loved Black Panther, and there's nothing to take away from Black Panther, but which one talks more about race, Get Out or Black Panther?
Yeah.
Get Out does. I mean...
And somebody might make the argument that not every film that gets nominated for Best Picture has to be some kind of cultural landmark. It certainly helps, but not necessarily does it have to fall in that category. But these films, I know because they make so much money and they make so many of them, they want to try to carry on some kind of silly prestige. But these are just fun, disposable movies, especially with Marvel's formula of... do pretty good, but don't take any great chances.
Yeah.
Say what you want about like the X-Men movies. Most of them are garbage, but at least they try things. They fail most of the time, but when they hit a Logan, they hit a Logan.
That's true.
And I'm sorry, Marvel, but considering that you use Wonder Woman and Logan as examples of movies that were almost nominated for Best Picture and how The Dark Knight should have been, but Logan, X2, Spider-Man 2, not in your guys' camp. You didn't make those.
And
those are the best Marvel movies.
And Dark Knight is one. We've said this before. That's not really a superhero movie.
Yeah,
it's a
cop thriller.
It's a cop thriller drama.
One of the cops dressed like a bat.
Exactly. I mean, let's be honest here. It is not a superhero movie by any stretch of the imagination. So you can't really make that comparison. And as you just alluded to, these movies are strictly controlled in the type of stuff that they can and can't do. Where's the risk in these movies? And there isn't any because they've done mathematical formulas to try to get rid of much of that risk as they can.
Well, they've purposely done this. They've made it, like a comic book series. Like each one of these movies will lead into the next thrilling episode. By themselves, they're not that great. As a whole, they're fantastic. You watch them chronologically.
Yeah. And the thing too is like, why do you need validation from the Academy?
Yeah.
You're already raking in crap tons of money every single time one of these movies comes out. Even like low-rung Marvel films, for the most part, are cashing in every single time that they come out. Like
the Ant-Mans?
Like the Ant-Man. Well, Ant-Man is actually kind of funny.
Well, I'm saying that, when you say low-rung, you mean not Captain America, not Iron Man.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Ant-Man's probably
about your Iron Man 3, for instance.
Well, Guardians is huge now, but nobody knew anything about them. And that movie still made $1 quadrillion.
But like even the Thor sequels, which, you know, Ragnarok I actually did enjoy and thought that it was definitely leaps and bounds better than Dark Elves.
Well, that's true.
But I mean, you know, even those movies, every single time they come out, even though they have flaws and you can definitely see them, they're cleaning up, you know, financially.
People love them.
Yeah.
So you're making a quality product that people like, and you're making a lot of money doing it. So just relax.
So just shut up. Like I want to tell these screenwriters, shut the fuck up.
Like there are some people that need acknowledgement from the Academy because their movie plays in 25 theaters and they made $8,000. You know, it's their art films that need validation.
Well, let me tell this to. I doubt these people are actually listening, but if you want recognition from the Academy, you're not going to get it from a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Okay? Stop writing for Marvel. Go write your own little art house film. You know, you've made enough contacts with Marvel that you could probably eke out some sort of distribution deal that gets you at least four-walled in New York and Los Angeles for a limited time. And go get your Oscar based on that. You're not going to get it from Iron Man. You're not going to get it from Thor. You're not going to get it from Captain America. These are great movies. Do not get us wrong. But they are not going to be accepted by the Academy. It's just not going to happen.
Let me put it this way. Children of a Lesser God, Kiss of a Spider-Woman, Blue Velvet, Shawshank Redemption. You know what all these movies had in common? They didn't run a commercial telling you that in a day you can go watch the trailer online.
That's right. or a Twitter video that came and said, "Oh, guess what? Here's a little 5-second snippet of the new trailer that's going to come out tomorrow." You know, that's the difference. That's exactly what you're talking about. So, yeah.
Casablanca, Godfather,
calm the
Avengers
fuck down.
Infinity War.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, your contemporaries are basically Michael Bay. So be happy. Be happy that you are leaps and bounds better than Michael Bay. I mean, that guy, holy shit. But yeah, that's a good news. Be happy.
You are better than Michael Bay. That's a good place to leave it.
That is a good place to leave it at. So, okay.
So let's go get that sweet ad revenue and go over to our friends over at the Epicast Network.
All right, pause. You're enjoying this Epicast Network show, but what are you going to listen to next?
Come over and listen to us, Does This Hold Up podcast.
It's a movie review show where we take films from the past, analyze them, answer the question to does this hold up?
Not really.
Not really, no. We talk about things like Karate Kid. You've all seen it. You love it. But do you remember Mr. Miyagi gets blackout drunk and talks about how many Germans he's killed in the war?
You've seen Goonies. Have you seen Mouth? He's not Mouth because he's loud. Mouth can fit a lot of things in his mouth.
He's terrific at oral.
He's known for how many round things he can juggle with his tongue.
So come over, check out Does This Hold Up whenever you're done with whatever Epicast TV show you're listening to now.
Go to epicastnetwork.com, epicast.tv.
At Does This Hold Up.
And we're back. That was a message from our friends over the Epicast Network, specifically Does This Hold Up?
Wait, what message? I didn't hear anything in my headphones.
You're not wearing headphones.
Oh, son of a bitch. You guys are holding me down.
Go check out them and the other great podcasts from Epicast at epicastnetwork.com.
So let's talk about Jim Carrey. I mean, Cable Guy. Why did I start there?
Well, this is interesting. This is coming out now. So I alluded to this at the top of the show here. Apparently, Jim Carrey is in some hot water over a painting.
Yeah, Jim Carrey, I actually, here, I'm going to date myself. I bought, because I was obsessed with Jim Carrey until about the late 90s, and I kind of drifted off into other things. I bought the
You found porn.
Yeah, I found pornography. I was like, woo! I bought the A&E biography of Jim Carrey on VHS. I ordered it off television.
Oh, my God.
Yes. And during that,
I remember when they used to advertise those at the end of the biography shows.
Yeah, I hit record on a blank VHS so that I could order it off TV. I think it's still at my mom's house. They mentioned that he was actually a fine artist as well. He did ceramics, paintings, things like that. Like things that you don't think about that Jim Carrey does, because he doesn't get the attention that Dumb and Dumber, or Dumber and Dumberist, or The Dumbest and Dumberistest, or whatever the hell that sequel was called. But yeah, so he had done an interesting set of paintings. One in particular about a person close to the White House, Brian. So what did he paint up?
Well, I thought he made a true to life rendition of Sarah Huckabee Sanders,
who was the sister of a guy who murdered a dog for pleasure. Let's not forget that.
No. It really?
Yeah, Mike Huckabee's kid, like,
are you serious?
Yeah, murdered and tortured a dog, and
wow,
nobody talks about it.
I'm not surprised.
Now she's not her brother's keeper, but just thought I'd mention that.
No, but
he
basically, I forget what he titled it as, but he posted on Twitter and said that it was a picture of a like ultra right Christian defending a child or bully or something like that.
Yeah, or just going after like people, even though against their Christian values that they supposedly uphold. And he put monstrous at the end.
Yeah, and it's very monstrous, but it definitely looks like her.
And a lot of people are up in arms because are they suggesting that he's saying that she's monstrous looking? Is that what people are upset about?
I mean, let's put it this way: people who support the president are saying that. It's kind of like taking that, well, don't fat shame her argument or that something like that.
I think he means she's a monstrous person.
Well,
right?
well, that's
like in her soul.
That's what thinking people see. Yeah. Like I saw it as she's monstrous in her soul and has sold her soul to a pathological liar and is basically peddling his lies every day.
Yeah.
So that's what I saw it as. But there are people out there who support the president and see this as, oh, they're attacking the way she looks. I don't give a shit what the fuck she looks like.
The guy she works for.
Yeah.
Like, no one listens to fat women. Like, a hot woman comes in, and I don't care if she's an astrophysicist. I just want to know, like, what her cup size is. Like, the kind of things he said about women.
I mean, who was the press secretary for Bush #2? Dana Pirno or something like that?
That sounds right.
Yeah, so she was not bad looking. She still was saying shit. I mean, so I'm not judging by the looks. I'm just saying what she's peddling is garbage. And he painted that, and his painting represented that. So, I mean, take it for what it is. That's what it is.
Old Jim's become kind of kooky. He's got that big beard. He's sporadic in his appearances. Doesn't really make movies.
He's always been kind of kooky. Like, I remember when he was at the MTV Movie Awards, right when Man on the Moon came out. Yeah. And he was sporting the massive beard. He was all hippie-like, and he went on stage. He was like, peace and love and all sorts of shit. And you're just like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, he was doing, kind of like a happening.
Yes.
He was doing a bit, like where he was fully in character, never broke it, and everybody's just going, huh?
They're like, what the fuck is going on?
Kind of the anti-comedy where I'm going to be so unfunny, it's going to be funny.
Yes.
Trick.
But the
sometimes works.
The key thing, though, is this kind of all started from the movie The Cable Guy.
Right. And so let's just very briefly, talk about Jim Carrey's rise to success.
Sure.
He made very, very forgettable movies, as most people do when they come in.
Oh, come on.
Once Bitten.
Once Bitten's amazing. We talked about Once Bitten.
Earth Girls Are Easy, which if you haven't seen that movie,
great film.
Go out of your way to see it.
Great film.
It's awesome. He was in the Deadpool, the third, I believe, fourth Dirty Harry movie.
Oh, yeah. He was a punk.
Yep. He was a rock
punk
star.
I remember that.
That, gets injected with drugs while he's sleeping. And then had his big break with In Living Color, which was an ensemble cast of comedians on Fox. And unlike SNL, it's funny, it was reversed. It was predominantly a black cast with Jim Carrey as the token white guy.
Great sketches.
And they didn't go out of
that.
their way to have a token white guy. I think it was David Wayans said, I worked with this guy, Jim, on Our Girls Are Easy. This guy's hilarious. You got to give him an audition.
Yeah. Oh, God, I loved In Living Color.
And then, interestingly enough, as a segue here, when his pitches weren't getting any attention from Marlon Wayans, Jim Carrey would talk out of his butt to pitch a sketch just to piss off Marlon Wayans because he would get so angry, which leads to something he did in Ace Ventura, kind of his breakout movie.
Yeah.
And 94 was a hell of a year for Jim.
Oh, my God. I
Ace
remember
Ventura.
94.
Ace Ventura, then The Mask, and then Dumb and Dumber. So
Yeah.
it was, I believe it was February to June to December.
Yep.
All three of those movies. And I couldn't believe that they'd all come out in 94.
Here's the thing. When I was a kid, 94 kind of stuck in my head. I never saw the first Ace Ventura in theaters. I saw it later, but I was exposed to The Mask first. And one thing I can remember about The Mask was that the VHS tape for it had the trailer for Dumb and Dumber attached to it. So you're getting Jim Carrey here, and here he's in the next thing. And oh my God, he was fucking hilarious in those movies.
I mean, this kind of thing happens. I think in 1 year, Entertainment Weekly busted his nuts because Jude Law made like 7 movies in 1 year. Like sometimes you just get a lot of work.
It just happens.
You know, in some of the movies, I think Jude Law did like a voiceover for the beginning of an animated movie. That was like a week of work. You know,
that was like 2001 or 2002 when
Right.
it was a Jude Law year.
Yeah, but that still counts as like that's a movie you came out with that year. And then 95, he hit financial pay dirt and blockbuster pay dirt with playing the Riddler, just not good pay dirt.
Yeah.
This movie's terrible, and they obviously went the more.
He also
family
did
route.
Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls in the same year, I believe.
Yeah. So he was the Riddler, which say what you want about how the movie turned out. Like landing that role, because even like Robin Williams is up for it, and poor Robin Williams.
Poor guy, rest his soul.
They initially fucked him over to get Jack Nicholson to play the Joker. They even had told both Robin Williams and Jack Nicholson that they cast Robin. And then Jack's like, I want the role. Give it to me. And they're like, haha, it worked. And they had to call Robin and say, hey, we used you as bait. And he was super pissed. And then they essentially told him, you have the role of the Riddler. And then like, wait, we can get Jim Carrey, the hottest guy in Hollywood right now? Sorry, Robin, again, we got to kick you to the curb.
We got this other movie, though, called Jumanji. You might really like that. You can do that, though. You know?
Yeah. So poor Robin Williams. But, you know, so
we're not going to even talk about Billy D. Williams.
So he's on a roll. You know, even Ace Ventura 2, once again, not critically acclaimed. Not a very good movie, although riddled with
It's
great
fucking
jokes.
hilarious.
It's a quotable.
God.
It's like Billy Madison. I say that movie's very quotable. It's stupid and awful, but it's quotable as fuck.
Yeah. Happy Gilmore is definitely the better of the Sandler movies. If you're going to watch Billy Madison,
I'm an
or Happy
Airheads
Gilmore,
man.
Airheads is good.
Airheads, yeah.
That's not really a Sandler movie, though.
Yeah,
That's a Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi movie.
Well, the Lone Rangers, all three of them have the same tension. But yeah, so now he's cooking with gas.
Yep.
And here comes the cable guy, and everybody's, what's Jim Carrey's next big thing gonna be? And he seems like one of a kind. Like my dad, when I was a kid, I always referred to him as like this generation's Jerry Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's not even what the movie is. You're going to see Jim Carrey. It's like a wrestling event that has Hulk Hogan. Like you don't really even care what the rest of the card is. You want to go see Hulk Hogan.
That's right.
You want to see.
He's the main event.
Yeah, you want to see Jim Carrey and what crazy things he's going to do with his face and characters and his body, how he's going to fling it around. And so we get to the cable guy, and I say we start with Jim Carrey because I think it is simultaneously, to contradict myself on purpose, it is the reason this movie works and why it fails.
Yeah.
I don't think this movie could have worked without Jim Carrey, but I think he's also the reason that it doesn't succeed.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. The Cable Guy was a movie that I was looking forward to coming out. Like, I remember when they were promoting it and all that stuff, and, you know, I got it on, I rented it when it became available, because back in those days, you had to go to the video store.
What's a video store?
I've already done my video store bit. I'm not going to do it again. But, you know, got the tape, watched it, and I watched it with my mom and my brothers, and, you know, I thought it was hilarious, but everyone else was just like, that's kind of dumb.
It's
It's really dark.
I mean, partly you have what you expect from Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
He's got a goofy voice. He walks around all silly. He does a lot of physical comedy. The scenarios are outrageous, but in a lot of ways, it's not what you would expect. And I would say that, we do a segment on Really That Awful called In Fairness. And I would say the big in fairness part of this is, and we talked about this last week with Leprechaun episode, this was a script that was written one way.
Yeah.
It was a bidding war for it somehow. It was $1 million. But then Jim Carrey wanted it to be rewritten to be more of a Stalker film, more of a kind of a horror movie.
Yeah, I mean,
and they rewrote the thing.
They rewrote it to appease him.
Yeah. And they brought in Judd Apatow, and I'm sure Ben Stiller had a couple of rewrites himself. Ben Stiller's the director.
Well, Judd
of this
Apatow
movie.
brought Stiller in.
Yeah. And so they ended up taking the script, and instead of starting from the ground up, they reworked this one to make it dark and creepy, which affects the tone. And I really think that's what people have a problem with this movie, is that at points it seems lighthearted and goofy, maybe a little mean, but not overly. But then towards the latter half of the second act of this movie and the third act, this movie turns really dark and sinister.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like there have been times when I've had friendships as a young adult through high school and as an adult where I'm just like, I always have in the back of my mind, I'm like, is this guy gonna be a cable guy on me? Is that gonna happen? And I think a lot of people have had those friends that are overly attached to them. Everybody's had one, I think, that's just like, they like you too much.
My friend Matt told me that he had a roommate that would like follow him room to room, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? Get away from me. I don't know if you've just never lived on your own before, but just because we're roommates doesn't mean you have to follow me into each room. And
I think it's not to criticize those people. It's just to say, like, we've all had that experience. And I think that's probably what Carrey was trying to come up with, was, trying to communicate that in a film and make it funny. But there are times in this movie when it feels more sinister than anything else.
And yeah, I'm just going to try to give the 60-second overview of this movie.
Yeah.
It's your classic stalker movie.
Yeah.
It starts off with Matthew Broderick calling a cable guy. Cable guy seems odd, but he gets set up on all the free channels because his friend Jack Black told him to offer him $50.
Jack Black before he got famous.
Before he was famous, yeah. But Ben Stiller friend.
Yeah.
And over time, the cable guy first tricks him into hanging out with him, and at first it seems okay. Like Matthew Broderick's a little uncomfortable, but the guy seems friendly enough.
Well, he feels like he's obligated to do it.
Right.
Because he did hook him up with free cable. And it's just like, well, you know what? I'll give him a night. No problem. And
then, before long, Jim Carrey's character is helping him with his relationship, and things are going well before they suddenly go horribly wrong. And Jim Carrey becomes obsessed. He's leaving 30 messages a day on Steven, who is Matthew Broderick's character's Steven, his voicemail, and just, bugging him at work. And when he says when Matthew Broderick's character says to Jim Carrey, I don't have any room for any friends, that's when it turns kind of dark and sinister.
Yeah.
And Jim Carrey starts to kind of destroy his life. And
in really methodical ways.
Yeah.
Like, he's a genius at revenge. I got to say that.
It's like Fatal Attraction, Play Misty for me, these classic, but they're doing it as almost, best friends, brothers kind of things. Because when Jim Carrey was a little kid, they show flashbacks that his babysitter, because he was a latchkey kid, was television. Yep. And he always wanted a little brother, but, his mom was never able to get knocked up at the bar. She says, like, well, I'm going to happy hour to make you a brother. And, so he never had a brother, so he kind of lived vicariously through TV, and every experience he has, he relates to television.
Yeah.
Oh, this is how Carol Brady would have raised her kids, or, this is how Rob Petrie from Dick Van Dyke Show would have handled this. And it's colored everything about his personality. And he kind of becomes more and more unhinged and just continues to destroy Matthew Broderick's life until we get to the thrilling climax of the film. Right. But just to give you kind of a context of that, but it's the point where Jim Carrey has ruined Matthew Broderick's life before we get to the climax that Jim Carrey calls him on a landline. Mm-hmm. And said, well, why didn't his number just come on his cell phone? He didn't answer it. There wasn't cell phones. And he's lying on the floor. It looks like pavement. And
we did this on Instagram.
Yeah. And he's
This is after his nightmare.
right.
This is after the nightmare sequence. I think that Batman v Superman might have stolen this. Just saying. So
But at least that one was obviously a dream.
Yeah. So Matthew Broderick has a nightmare that Jim Carrey's character, whose name's Chip Douglas, maybe,
Yeah.
or Darren Stevens,
Larry Tate.
or Larry Tate.
Yeah.
So he's having this nightmare that he's knocking on his door, going, "Cable guy, cable gula," and he knocks down the door, and he's like a ghoul. He's got illuminated eyes, and he's like, "I just want to hang out." No big deal. And he chases him down.
And it's the $1 Million Man Steve Austin music while he's chasing him. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, no, we just got flagged. Okay, that's as far as we can go. Yeah, but then like he actually gets a call from him, and he's lying on the floor, like a pavement floor, and a spider runs across his face. And I remember seeing this in the theater, and I was like, "Oh shit, that was really fucking creepy."
Well, I saw it, and I'm like, did they fuck up the take? Like, that's what I initially thought. I'm like, oh, they must have not have seen that spider was crawling on his face. And then I realized later on, I'm like, no, they wanted that spider to be on his face.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is super creepy. He's like, what a shame. We could have been blood brothers.
And it seems odd because throughout the movie, he seems a little unhinged and a little odd, but he doesn't seem dangerous.
No.
Until he suddenly becomes dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the biggest problem with the movie. Because even the scene where Matthew Broderick's girlfriend and him are split up. Yeah, and she's dating other people, and of course Jim Carrey's character, who's crazy, decides to take it upon himself to get this new guy who's Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson.
Ben Stiller directed the movie.
He doesn't have a name, by the way. He's just Robin's date. Like, you look on IMDb, just Robin's date. Oh, Owen Wilson, okay.
But he beats the living crap out of this guy in a bathroom, and then at the end he says, "Stay away from Robin." But the whole thing is done so hilariously.
It is.
Because once again, the problem with the movie and the only reason the movie works is Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
In a way, that scene is memorable, and the reason you remember this movie is scenes like this because of Jim, but also at the same time, it doesn't in any way have the impact that I think it should.
Right, because you have to think, if you had another actor in that role, the comedy would not be there anymore.
You mean like Chris Farley?
Well, not even just Chris Farley.
Well, the reason I say that is Chris Farley was originally offered this role because he
Right.
went to the studio one more movie.
Right.
And then, yeah, we all know what happened with Chris. He was also the voice of Shrek.
Yeah.
And they had to re-record Shrek.
Well, this came out before he died.
Oh, did they just...
Yeah, this came out in 96.
They probably... He probably failed a physical or something.
No, he had basically like scheduling conflicts with it.
Oh,
So
okay.
It had nothing to do with him dying. He died in 97. So...
Because Matthew Broderick's character would have been David Spade, probably.
Probably. But no, like, I just imagine that if you had any other actor in this role who was not a comedian, okay, like if you had, just trying to think of someone, like if you had Chris O'Donnell in this, he was big at that time. Why not? If you had him in this would be very threatening. Like this would be something that's a lot darker than it actually is. There wouldn't be really any comedic elements. So I think really the what you're saying is that, it's a comedy because of Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because of the subject matter.
Well, also Ben Stiller, too, as a new director, and Jim Carrey being the hottest star in the world. Like, I'm sure there was very little control they had over Jim doing this. He just did what he wanted.
He got $20 million for this role.
Yeah.
Highest at the time.
It was probably... guaranteed contract.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, yeah, you're going to let me improvise or I'm going to leave, and you guys have already paid me.
Yeah.
And I think the budget for this movie is $47 million. 20 of that was Jim's paycheck. So,
wow. Crazy. Yeah. But what are some of your favorite scenes from this movie?
Yeah, let's talk about what does work.
What does work?
I think that this movie's kind of referential understanding of where we were oddly in 96, because it's so funny how dated the movie is now. Like, if you saw this movie, I say as a 16-year-old kid now, you'd be like, what's the big deal about TV? We don't even have cable in my house. Or they might not even know what cable is. It was very much addressing kind of how we become zombies to
Yeah.
entertainment. And I mean, that still holds up. It's just now it's Amazon Instant Video and Netflix and whatever else. But so it's just a different medium to the same end, is that we just become glorified zombies in front of some kind of screen that we don't even really know who we are anymore.
I think it's also more or less a matter of how much does our pop culture influence our personality?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do we view ourselves when we have pop culture figures that sometimes end up raising us? You know, I was a kid that, you know, I did have my parents there, but there were a lot of times that I was in front of the TV watching VHS tapes, or I was watching cartoons, or I was watching something on TV. I think you were also in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you didn't have any sort of support system there, how much of your personality would be replaced by the characters that you did connect with on television?
Yeah.
You know?
But I would say, I think one of the things that really works about this movie, and that things that I remember from it, are not what people would expect, but it's Matthew Broderick's performance.
Yes.
Because he's just so good as this guy who seems like he could very easily be taken advantage of by a huge personality like Chip or Larry or whatever name he's going by. Because you never find out his real name. He uses characters from TV. Chip Douglas, My Three Sons, Larry Tate from the Elizabeth Montgomery. Come on.
I don't know.
Bewitched.
Oh, Bewitched, yeah.
Is the ad agency boss there. And Jim is just such an imposing figure next to Matt. Now, I know Matthew's very short, but Jim's also a tall guy. So just even times where he's kind of looming over him, you know, it's just kind of like, I'm going to tell you what to do, little guy. And that works very well.
It's a good screen combination.
Yeah.
You know, like kind of like Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing. You know, Matthew Broderick is able to add that kind of balance to the zaniness that Carrey brings to it. I think that's what you're trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, in a way that Batman works because of Jack Nicholson, like this movie does work because of Jim Carrey, but, you know, in the same way that you needed Michael Keaton almost as that balance for Batman.
That's
you
right.
Got, not apples to apples, but you got Matthew Broderick here. Because he almost seems like an odd casting choice, because he had gotten past his fame of that Brat Pack guy, but he hadn't quite, you know,
he did a
solidified
couple
his
roles
Broadway
here and there.
time, and, you know, so this is in between things for Matthew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think his performance kind of carried the movie, because he brought like a lot of control and balance to Jim Carrey's, you know, madness. It wasn't like Tommy Lee Jones in Batman Forever, where he was just trying to outdo Jim Carrey to the point where you're exhausted halfway through the movie.
And you're just like, what the fuck is Tommy Lee Jones doing half the time?
Yeah, but most of the memorable scenes in this are because of Jim Carrey, you know, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Like the karaoke scene.
Yeah.
And, you know, all the scenes at the
Medieval
satellite
times.
dish.
Oh, I was going to say the medieval time stuff.
Yeah. Which that was Jim Carrey's decision. He said, I can't believe medieval times has never been used in a movie.
Yeah.
So he just kind of like forced it into this.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. So Brian, let me ask you, what do you really like about this movie? We talked about things that possibly didn't work about it, but what is it about it that
I really like?
And yeah.
I like the setups for some of these jokes. Like the situations that they put the characters in that Chip Douglas creates, I find hilarious. So I'll give one of my favorites, and that is the porno password scene. Great scene, and the reason why I love the scene is because it's not so much what Jim Carrey's doing; it's the reaction from Matthew Broderick's character. You know, and his reaction in relation to everyone else.
Because his character is being bullied by Jim Carrey, but none of the rest of the cast knows it.
No.
Yeah.
And, well, the thing is they just think that Matthew Broderick is just being an asshole.
Yeah, why are you being so stiff? Why are you being such a jerk? Yeah.
So just to kind of set the stage for this, you know, at this point, you know, Matthew Broderick and Jim Carrey are kind of on the outs in terms of their friendship, okay? This is past that nightmare scene we talked about. And basically, Jim Carrey has infiltrated the family
Yeah.
And invited himself to game night.
And he's like in a sweater. He looks like Mr. Rogers. He acts like Mr. Rogers.
He does. He looks just like Mr. Rogers. And he's infiltrated game night at you know, Steven's house, his parents' house. And so we're meeting the parents, we're meeting his brothers, and I guess his sister, and his Matthew Broderick's girlfriend is there, and he's basically taking all of these close family members and friends and turning them against him.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best part of the scene. And what ends up happening is, Jim Carrey says, I can't believe you guys never played Porno Password. It's the offshoot of the popular game. And so the way Porno Password works is you have two people on each team, and one person has a password and says it to the other person, and the other person has to guess it. I think
It's
I'm
like
getting that
Taboo.
right. It's like Taboo, yeah. And the best part is Steven is on the team with his mother.
And has to say things
And
like
has to say
nipple
things
and
like
foreskin.
nipple and foreskin. And the best part is each one of these words is just driving a wedge between Steven and his family and friends, and also increasing the wedge between Steven and Chip. Like, it's great. It's a fantastic scene. Best part being when he's like, that little thing. Right above and he's just like, I'm done. And it just blows up. And I love that scene. It's one of my absolute favorites. But there are so many great scenes in this. The basketball scene is great. It just shows how extreme he can be. You know? And the jail scene, I think that's what most people think of when they think of Cable Guy.
This is also something Jim Carrey, when he met with Judd Apatow, wrote down on a napkin, tits on glass. Because he wanted to do an homage to Midnight Express.
Yeah.
And so he wrote tits on glass. So they didn't forget.
Yeah.
Put this in the file, guys.
Yeah. But, he's managed to get Steven sent to jail because of the video equipment that he's stolen for him. It's just all set up. It's all like a maniacal setup that he's basically made it so that if you're not his friend, he can fuck your life up. And he does. And he ends up in jail, and Chip is the only person who visits him and says, you need human connection.
Contact. Yeah.
You need human contact.
Oh, Billy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Such a great scene.
But I would say one of the failures of this movie, because it just popped in my head, I'm sorry, we've moved on from this part.
That's all right.
Is that everybody else that he seems to have befriended, Chip does, really likes him. And I think that it should have been a pattern.
You mean like during the karaoke?
The karaoke scene, or the people at Medieval Times seem to like him.
Oh, yeah.
Andy Dick's character in that, who works at Medieval Times, like they let them fight at Medieval Times because he gave all the people Medieval Times free cable. Like all the other people in his life seem to like him, and I thought there should have been more research done by Matthew Broderick where he finds other people's lives that Chip has ruined. And it's like, and that way they could have at least set up some kind of backstory. Like, he starts out really nice, and then he becomes obsessive, and then you see a different side of him.
I don't think you necessarily need that, though. I really don't. I don't think that's necessary.
I just think he shifted too much from just like a goofy, kind of dorky, helpless guy to genius sociopath.
But I think what's great about that is that he's basically, like, every one of his relationships is a con. You know what I mean? Like, it's a setup con. Yeah. It's every single one of them. So
because he doesn't know how to relate to people.
He doesn't know how to relate to people. He only knows how to be charismatic from TV, which is the ultimate charismatic machine. I mean, that is all propaganda. So the fact that he's able to manipulate these people to get him free stuff and to help him out and things like that, while at the same time basically baking in their own doom if he so chooses it, is a really interesting take on this character. And it's more than I don't think you necessarily need to have it explained to you that way. This is more or less about the relationship between Matthew Broderick's character and Jim Carrey's character. And I think if you had tangents going off where Matthew Broderick discovers he'll fuck your life up, I think that might kind of take away from some of the shock that we get later in the film when it does go dark.
Well, yeah, I guess maybe walking back what I said a second ago.
You don't need to walk back.
No, because I was thinking while you were talking there, Matthew Broderick is the only normal person that Jim Carrey has befriended.
Yeah.
And so maybe because all these people are kind of oddballs and a little weird to begin with, maybe they just kind of aren't surprised by his behavior, while Matthew Broderick's like, I'm a normal guy trying to live my life.
Yeah.
And so that's, maybe he's the first one that's really turned on Chip's affections.
I mean, I tend to think that's not the case. Right. I tend to think that it has been more. And they do have a scene where Jack Black's character does do a little bit of digging and does find that he has been accused of stalking and things like that. So, but that comes in right at the climax, which is when we want it to happen.
Yeah. Nobody named Chip Douglas has ever worked for the cable company.
Yeah. And then, of course, we start to see that the pattern is going to repeat again when Chip starts to, manipulate and fall for Steven's girlfriend, Robin.
But I think that was all just for manipulation as well.
No, I don't think so. You really think it was just for manipulation?
Well, the scenes like when he's in the pipes, or not the pipes, but obviously
he's in the vents.
The vents, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
No cable guy has to go in the vents. By the way.
And he's seeing like her shoulder, like she took her shirt off in the tattoo. He's just using that for further use against Steven.
Okay.
But a lot of this I give forgiveness to because of this is comedy, and I think a lot of people had a hard time seeing this as a comedy because it turns so disturbing and so dark that, well, how can you find this funny? How am I supposed to laugh at this when I think dark comedy is the hardest thing to hit right.
It really is.
Because a lot of people get so easily turned off by a mean-spirited movie about dark jokes, dark humor. And I think that is the second reason why this movie didn't hit with audiences, is because it is dark. And the ending is dark. It doesn't have like, everything like turned out okay in the end.
Well, I mean, it... The ending of it is not as dark as it could have been.
Yeah, according to you saw the same research I did.
It's not as dark as it could have been. What was the ending that they proposed doing that was a little bit more darker?
Well, Jim was prepared to die. In the scene. Because he lands on the satellite dish. Because through the whole movie, there's this little like in the background story of I can't remember. Their character's last name is Sweet. I can't remember.
Sam and Stan Sweet.
Yes, damn. And it's a takeoff on not exactly the same thing, but the Menendez brothers, where the idea is in this case one of them killed the other, and I think they're supposed to be former child actors.
They were former child actors, yes.
And so this is like the OJ, the Menendez brothers, the Tonya Harding. Like
this was the big Hollywood court thing going on.
The trial of the century.
Yes,
you hear that so often. And that's just going on in the background, and it's talk about how the media just overhypes and sensationalizes that kind of thing, but it's all in the background of the whole thing. And the night that Jim Carrey kidnaps Matthew Broderick's girlfriend, and they had the big confrontation at the satellite dish, Jim Carrey is about to fall, and Matthew Broderick grabs him and says, like, "Look, you don't have to do this," because he's trying to kill himself. And he goes that famous line, "Somebody has to kill the babysitter." And he falls a tremendous drop onto the satellite dish, which has a pointy thing at
spire.
At the end of it. And in the original script, I believe they had it that he lands like chest first on it.
I mean, that
impales him.
That's what I figured it was going to be.
But I don't think that either the studio didn't want it or something along those lines, and they decided that he lands next to it and lives.
Yeah.
Just very, very, very injured.
But he lives and it then repeats the cycle again.
That was cheap. That was that horror movie ending.
Yeah.
I did not like.
Yeah.
When the guy's like, "Hold on, buddy,"
are you am I really your buddy?
Yeah.
Sure you are.
Yeah, and he mugs at the camera. They give that Home Alone mug to the camera. But at the very end too, they try to
there's gonna be a sequel.
They try to find out what his real name is, and like I was oddly sitting there excited to find out what his name was, like, if he said Dan Smith, like that's gonna be a payoff I'm gonna be happy about.
Yeah,
like I find out his real name.
Instead he says Ricky Ricardo.
So yeah, the ending seems sinister. It also leaves it open, and Jim Carrey not being the wild and crazy guy. Sorry, Steve Martin. I know that's your shtick, but just and being a happy-go-lucky goofball, I think is what really just kind of cemented this movie. And back then it was really word of mouth. You know.
Yeah, and
Oh,
a
don't
lot
go see
of
Cable Guy.
a
He's
lot
not
of
Ace
people
Ventura.
hated it.
He's not
hated
talking,
it.
Yeah, he's not talking in his butt in this one.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of the problem is people had an expectation because of movies like Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and the Ace Ventura movies, and even Batman Forever, that they're going to go into a Jim Carrey movie and they're going to get goofy cartoon shenanigans.
Yeah.
And this was the first one that didn't have that.
I mean, it does to a degree.
Yeah, but not...
it's in a darker way.
Yeah.
Because while even somebody like Ace Ventura maybe does things that are attractive to people, it's always lighthearted attractive.
Yeah. What's interesting is he followed this one with Liar Liar, which was a return to the goofy shit.
Yeah.
And it honestly, Liar Liar is exhausting to watch nowadays. Like, I don't know if you've watched it recently, but he takes like all of that shit that he used to do in like Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask, and he just like amps it to 11.
Yeah. He's got to get back to form.
Because, you know, he was like, well, that Cable Guy movie didn't work. I guess I have to give them more cartoon shenanigans. So,
and that movie lives and dies by him, too.
It does.
I mean, that movie is just so saccharine cornball, but Jim Carrey's hilarious in it.
Until you realize that he's basically deadbeat dad.
Yeah.
And you're just like, there's no redemption for you.
But yeah, so, like I said, I think he's the blessing and the cursing of this movie because... Yeah. Nobody else that you put into that role is going to sell this movie, but at the same time, not partly because I'd say 20% because of his performance, but 80% more audience expectations is what ended up ruining it. I think if he had done 2 quote unquote serious movies and a few more of his normal comedies, but then had gone back then and made Cable Guy, not right off at Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls and Batman Forever, like if he had done this a little ways down the road, I think this movie would have been a hit.
I think if he did this closer to Truman Show.
Yeah.
Like if he had Truman Show come out first and then did Cable Guy, I think he'd be fine.
Because even Truman Show is lighthearted. Like it's a serious movie. There are funny parts.
Yeah, but it also introduces us to a more dramatic Jim Carrey than a comedian Jim Carrey. That is the big difference. And I think if he had done a more dramatic role, which was widely praised, like a lot of people love The Truman Show, and then followed that with something that was like The Cable Guy, darker, I think people would be more receptive. Now, of course, he went way too far when he did, what was it, Number 23?
Oh, God. Yeah, Joel Schumacher's Number 23.
Yeah. That one was terrible. There's no redemption for that movie.
Which if he's 35 when he makes that film, and it comes out in the same year as plus minus 23. Oh fuck! But yeah, Roger Ebert said the main problem he had with the film, and Gene Siskel actually liked it quite a bit. But Roger Ebert said that Jim Carrey's performance was so bizarre and creepy that it undermined the entire story.
Yeah,
which I don't know. I think that's a little extreme, but I think talking about the audience unfair expectations. I think it's twofold. One, you assume a slam dunk and a great movie because Jim Carrey's in it.
Right.
And even though, like, we look back now, The Mask is kind of dumb. Ace Ventura doesn't age well. Batman Forever sucked. Like, so we were mistaken into thinking this guy's gold. But so you assume it's going to be great. When at the end of the day, Cable Guy, I like it a lot. It's not a great movie, but because Jim Carrey was in it, you thought, oh, this is going to be A+ material. And you also
I'd say it's a pretty decent dark comedy. Like that was what I would say. I wouldn't necessarily say it's Jim Carrey's best role. I would say it's a pretty decent dark comedy. Like I would put that up there with War of the Roses, Death to Smoochie, in terms of good dark comedies.
Right, but like if Marvel decided to just do a really kind of a side movie, but it was in their universe that didn't fit up to their expectations, people would automatically turn against it just because it's, well, this isn't... Not necessarily.
Have you ever seen any of the Netflix stuff?
Well, because let me just say cinema.
Okay,
cinema
I bring up the Netflix stuff because that stuff is darker than anything that they put on in film. And it still exists in the same universe. So like Jessica Jones and Daredevil and Luke Cage, those series are vastly different in tone compared to what we see in the films. And those have their own fan bases. There are people who love those series, and then there are people who hate them. But I just think you have to be careful with it.
And on the note of Jim, and I feel like I'm just putting all the weight of the world on his shoulders, is it's also expected that Jim Carrey will save a movie.
Yeah.
Ace Ventura without Jim Carrey is garbage.
Yes, it
Liar,
is.
Liar without Jim Carrey is garbage. Bruce Almighty even without Jim Carrey is, well, it's already kind of
I
garbage.
don't lie. I never liked Bruce Almighty.
But my point being that Jim Carrey didn't save the cable guy. It's a 7.5 with him, and I think it's a 7.5 without him out of 10.
If he wasn't in it, it would not be a comedy.
Right.
It would not even
what
be
if
a
they
dark comedy.
What if they put like Robin Williams in there?
I've already seen that movie. It's called 1 Hour Photo.
Oh, that movie's not funny.
That's
dark
what I
and
mean.
upsetting.
That's what I mean. Is I've already seen that movie. It's called 1 Hour Photo. Yeah. So I think without Jim Carrey, it loses the comedic element. You know what I mean? Like I think
I would say the insane comedic element, because
I still think
the
it's the
humor is
comedic.
there. You just maybe wouldn't have all the Jim Carrey isms.
I still believe that it really would lose any comedic element if Jim Carrey wasn't in it. He provides all the comedy in that movie, for the most part. Matthew Broderick really doesn't. He's a good foil, but he's not the comedian in this.
Right, but I'd say the situations also present the humor as well. Like Jim Carrey himself is a walking cartoon, but mostly in comedies, like it's usually the scenarios people find themselves in that provides the humor. Like take a Wes Anderson movie, who I'm not a fan of. Like the situations are what are humorous. Nobody really stands out as that's the funny guy. The situations are supposed to be funny.
Right. I guess my thinking about it is just if I were to replace any actor and still have them say the same lines and do the same actions that Jim Carrey is doing, it would no longer be comedic. It would be more of what's wrong with this person. He's not goofy. He is malicious. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I see. Even my favorite scene, which was the porno password scene, if you replaced it with anyone else, it would be far darker in tone. It would not have any of the comedic elements to it. Even if you had him say the same words, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
And I think it would be fair to say that there may be 3 stages that I saw this in that have kind of blinded me to this movie. I first saw it when I was in love with Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
So that might have blinded me. Then I saw it kind of down the road again when I was like 17 and everything's dark. Everything that's dark is awesome. And then the more sinister.
You had a goth period?
Well, every kid does. I mean, I didn't wear eyeliner and like smoke at Denny's until 3 a.m. But,
I never smoked, but I went to Denny's till 3 a.m.
Well, you kids going to order anything other than coffee? But
Fuck you.
every teenager has that like dark period. It's like, well, the more dark the humor is, the funnier it is. And then now I think I might be looking at it through rose-colored goggles. But having said all that and having rewatched it recently, the film does still work, even though cable's not the problem anymore.
I think it is a great example of foreseeing the role that media and technology take.
The future is now.
I mean, but I'm serious. Like, he's talking about you can play Mortal Kombat with a friend in Vietnam. We do that.
Yeah, over the internet.
Over the internets.
Yeah.
We are glued to screens every single day. You're listening to this podcast probably from a screen.
And thank you for that.
And thank you. Please subscribe to us. But I mean, I think that's the big takeaway from this is it predicted technology's role in our daily lives to some degree. And our obsession with it.
And there's a problem in there too, is that a lot of people don't like the mirror being turned onto them.
Yeah.
It's easy to look at cynicism of culture when it's not yourself. That's easier to laugh at. But, as I mentioned, something I stole from Movie Bob for our Oscar episode of how, of course, The Shape of Water was going to win Best Picture, which it did, because it's easier for smug old white liberals to say, oh yeah, all those people are the problem, and and that's what I'm fighting for, instead of Get Out, which is no, you smug old white guys
are just as bad.
It's hard for a society that probably does watch 6 hours of TV to go to a movie, and that movie saying you're kind of a zombie sheep. And it's like, oh, I don't want the mirror to be turned to me.
Right.
I don't want to see my own reflection. And so it's hard when the satire is pointed at you.
Right.
It's like, oh, let's do a joke about Trekkies, and then there's one guy in the room who's wearing a Captain Kirk outfit and go, what's so funny about that? It's like, because I don't want the jokes to be about me.
Right.
Let's make fun of Star Wars people. And then the guy who's dressed like a Wookiee, what's so funny about that? So I would say that is another reason why the film wasn't accepted at first. But considering there's been things that have been much darker down the road, I would say give this movie a second chance. If you saw it in like 96 or a few years after and you were turned off by it, give it a look now and, keep the understanding that obviously, the cable stuff isn't going to hold up. But look at it as replace cable with anything else. Yeah, internet. Yeah, PlayStation.
Yeah.
Voodoo. Facebook.
Yeah.
YouTube, whatever it may be. Replace it with that and then look at it in that context. And I think that you will like this movie a lot more.
I say the same thing. I would say pair this with Death to Smoochie, which is another great dark comedy that tackles media.
Is that a hint, Brian? Or are you laying an Easter egg for a future episode?
I mean, it could be. Maybe.
In August?
Probably.
In August.
I mean, okay, in August.
It's on the schedule.
Okay, I wasn't even referencing the schedule. I was just saying it's a good movie to watch with it. But yeah, I mean, my takeaway is, it's a great example of a film that takes risks, We don't see a lot of that nowadays. And we talked about this at the beginning of the show about how the Marvel guys want recognition for their milquetoast superhero movies.
Yeah. That all follow the same
That
formula.
all follow the same formula. This type of movie is a movie that you can definitely say it's original.
Oh, yeah.
There is nothing else like this.
Well, one of the bonuses from it is that you had what I like to call the anti-Saturday Night Live group.
Yeah.
You had Mr. Show with Bob Odenkirk and David Cross, who were both in this movie. You had Ben Stiller, who had the Ben Stiller Show, which had Andy Dick, Janine Garofalo, who were all in this movie.
You're MTV people.
Yeah, which, they said basically SNL has just become so patented and slapped on a lunchbox. And
This was at the rise of the Will Ferrell, Chris Kattan era.
Even slightly before them. Yeah, the Chris Elliott generation, as I like to call it.
Oh, God.
And so they said, we're going to be hip and irreverent way SNL was when it first started. Yeah. And this is those people making a movie. So, of course, yeah, it's interesting that you would say that the movie took chances and seemed a little different because it was from people that were willing to take chances and be a little bit different. Even Jim, who by that point was Mr. Hollywood, at least on his paycheck, still valued himself as a risk taker.
Right.
Not, I'd say after Truman Show, he kind of gave up on that and just started collecting his paychecks. But
yeah, Mr. Poplar's Penguins. That's when he gave up.
That's when Lemony Schnicket.
Yeah. That was his Jack and Jill. I won't hold it against you. You did Man on the Moon. I know they fucked you over on that, but I'm just saying,
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, give it another look. If you're not into dark comedies, by all means, don't check it out.
And that's okay too. Yeah. You don't have to like dark comedies. I think those are awesome.
Yeah. And Brian, I don't know your take on this, but my point is when we picked this particular movie, I'm not saying that this is the greatest movie of all time, and it was just so misunderstood. But it was before its time, and it's the greatest movie of all time. No, this movie is a little bit above average, extremely memorable, extremely funny. It has its problems. We address those right off the gate, or out of the gate. But I would say that it is undeservingly just flushed down the toilet. Yeah. I'm not saying this movie's flawless. It's got its problems.
Well, I looked at this on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'll be the first to say that I really don't give two shits about Rotten Tomatoes.
Me either.
Mainly because I look at it. I mean, we talked about this with the Ghostbusters thing. How it just seemed like people were giving good reviews without taking the movie into consideration.
Hold that thought, because thank you. That reminded me of something that really slipped out of my brain. One of the things that worked for Cable Guy, not to go off on a tangent, but everybody else in the movie was normal except Jim Carrey. Everybody else was a grounded, real person. And the reason the stupid Ghostbusters remake didn't work was because everybody else in the world was this zippy one-liner goofball that did weird finger gesturing things, and it was
And wontons.
Yeah, everybody was just kind of a goofball weirdo. There was no normal people to ground that fucking movie. It sucked. Ghostbusters should be men. Wait, what?
What was that?
Oh God! No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, sorry, your point.
No, my point is just that, Rotten Tomatoes gave this a 51 from audience and a 53 from critics. I don't really
Split
hold
down the middle.
much water for Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
But I would just definitely say, take a look at it. Don't judge it by reputation. Judge it by your own experience. And that goes with any movie, honestly. If you believe it, I mean, we're, I guess you could call us critics. Sorta. But I mean,
wait, I guess all we do is critique things.
all we do is critique things.
So yeah, I guess we can't.
I guess
we can't be
you could.
so cool and nonchalant. We're critics.
But my point is that, if I criticize a movie and you really love it, if you really love Ghostbusters, the remake, good for you. I don't. John, you don't. Lane does. But I mean, you still have to go out and watch it for yourself, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, critique is all just opinion. Like, it can be educated opinion, but I would always say that if someone says, I love that movie or that movie sucks, like, why? Be prepared to back it up. Like, and if you can, like, more power to you, because there's no right or wrong reason, but there better be a reason.
Yeah. I mean, or honestly, I'll take it even one step back from that. If you just say, well, I just like it. Okay. That's your opinion.
And there are plenty of movies that I can't explain why I like.
Right.
I just do. I
just
know.
do. Don't know why, but that's enough about that. John, where can they find you at on the Twitters?
Well, you can find me on the cable network now. Twitter, what is that?
Twitter. At the Unreal J-Word.
Was that Donald? It's a little Donald there. No, but you can find Lane at LA_Croft. You can find me at Brian Coddington. I was from the Psycho Show page. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google Plus at Psycho Show.
And you can also give us your opinions on Cable
You
Guy.
fucked up my thing.
Trying to sneak it in.
You can also find us on the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or question you want to throw away, or as John interrupted me, you want to talk about Cable Guy, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. And make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Send us a rate, send us a review. We really like getting those. It tells us how we're doing and what we need to improve upon. And catch a new episode available every Sunday.
Is this episode over? Preferred customer, my ass!
Epicast.